today we're going to talk about pet food with world recognized Dr. Jones of Veterinary Secrets, who, after more than 20 years of veterinary practice, switched his efforts to help pet parents at scale and has created this online community of over 3 million pet parents sharing tons of free, helpful tips to help our pets live longer, thrive better. So you're just such a gift to the community. So welcome, and excited to talk to today with you, Dr. Jones.
Okay, thank you, Rachel. And those are pretty kind words. You're also pretty well known yourself in the pet world, which is great. And you're getting me on here on these live streams. So I'm kind of looking forward to one just having this like back and forth conversation. And if anything, just kind of, in general, talking about dog food and talking about, right, how is it that is this healthy or not? And how did DCM come to be? And what's changed? Like, why is it so different than it was, 7 years ago?
Yeah, absolutely. And that's exactly what we're going to talk about is the new study, which is exciting and scary and confusing, but also clarifying all in one around grain-free versus grain-inclusive diets and how it impacts DCM and heart disease and what that means for you watching this and your dog. Regardless of your dog's age, breed, this impacts everyone potentially. So definitely make sure that watching this today, if you are looking to, which I know you are, if you're here to feed your dog the best possible diet with the most minimal risk, that you subscribe to both of our channels and you share this video so that we can spread this really important information. So let's just jump into it. I want to start a little bit at the basics, and then we're going to get into what this study says. We're going to break it down for you and also talk about the things that we're now avoiding and including in our pets' diet to keep them as healthy as possible. But first, Dr. Jones, can you tell me? I mean, I understand that DCM is the second or third most common heart disease in dogs, but can you tell me what it is, what it means? What are some symptoms maybe we could look for, breeds that might be prone to it? And then we'll go from there.
Sure, Rachel. So even when I was, in veterinary school, first in practice, I mean, it wasn't an uncommon disease that we see in dogs. It's far less common and, typical causes of congestive heart failure or heart disease in dogs, called DCM, dilated cardiomyopathy. And you think about the heart muscle being this, just like any big muscle, the big muscle of your legs, your big quadricep muscles. It's the heart is this one giant muscle which takes blood in and pumps blood throughout the body. It pumps it up to the lungs, gets oxygenated. Then it sends that blood with that oxygen throughout the body. But in this dilated cardiomyopathy, this type of disease, that maybe big, thick heart muscle, which might be half an inch thick, all of a sudden, and we've seen it, it gets to almost like paper thin, right? So you get this thin heart, like really thin. It's lost all its muscle, and the blood fills in the heart tries to pump and it can't, and or else it just gets even more stretched because you, as you imagine, think of the heart going from, this big thick muscle to something like a balloon, and it just can't effectively pump blood throughout the body. So that's when you're seeing the signs of heart disease. I mean, so your dog isn't getting enough oxygen. He's not getting enough oxygen to his brain. He's not getting nutrients circulated to the rest of his body. So that's why you're going to see some of those signs. Like, Rachel, have you seen a dog with heart disease before or seen some of the signs?
So I haven't, not in person. I mean, online in videos I have, but
Yeah.
I've never experienced this in person, which is interesting because, with fostering so many rescue dogs and being around dogs so much, I didn't when this first came up is on my radar in 2018, which we'll talk about. I was like, wow, I didn't realize this was a thing and it's impacting so many dogs.
Yeah. And I mean, fortunately, first of all, I mean, heart disease, period, it's common, but in the scale of all our dogs, it's not, like, it's far less common. And then most dogs that get heart disease, it's something to do with the valve. So they don't have heart failure. They have a valve. There's four chambers in the heart. One or two of those valves don't close properly and you hear a murmur. But in this big disease, cardiomyopathy, the whole heart has gotten thin and dilated and just can't pump effectively.
Mm.
But in like veterinary practice, this is something where typically it was genetic, and they, that's my dog barking in the background, telling me
Hello.
someone's here.
Okay. I'm sure
Um,
mine will probably say hello too. It's fine.
uh, but what would happen is that they often be these young dogs, but the two biggest breeds that come to mind. I saw a multiple number of Dobermans. So Dobermans and Boxers were the two most common breeds, but
Okay.
generally any of the large breeds, like I think of Great Dane, Irish Wolfhound.
Mm.
Remember, I think I saw a few Newfies that had it.
Yeah.
Um, they're the ones who are prone to it. So we know there's definitely a genetic correlation and results in something going wrong. So the amino acids, which are the building blocks of muscle, they're not laying down normal muscle within the heart. It gets thin and dilated. And that's when you see these. And often in practice, someone would come in like they're 2 or 3, their young dog has just gone out for a run and tried to walk and just collapsed. And then they see him just breathing, just all of a sudden, as you might watch your dog breathing maybe one breath every 10 or 15 seconds. I mean, these guys are breathing every second or so. You see them rapidly breathing, low energy. They might have sudden collapse, and as it progresses, you can get fluid in the lungs, fluid in other parts of the body. You might hear this coughing, and that's also going to attribute to the breathing. But often it's just like these fairly big guys, they're suddenly weak for no unexplained reason. We listen to their heart, see their heart rate's really elevated typically. You may or may not hear a murmur.
Mm.
And but often there might be an abnormal rhythm to that heart. And yeah, unfortunately, it's this type of disease, and it's really difficult to treat. So it's one obviously you never want your dog to get.
Sure.
Um, if to do whatever you can, but fortunately, it is very uncommon. But is that linked to diet? Good question.
We'll get into that too. So,
Yeah,
so the biggest issue it seems a contributing factors we think is
yeah.
genetics, breed, but then there also could be a diet impact, which I think we're still exploring, and this study tries to address, but I think there's still questions. It seems like. So I think this just it makes it interesting to me because the most common and most popular topic and question I get every single day, and I'm sure you are similar,
Yes.
is what do I feed my dog? What's the best food? And while this can be kind of scary and overwhelming, it does help us kind of figure out like what that best food or one of the best food types is, which we'll get into. So that kind of leads me into where this became more mainstream because there was a big, we'll call it the grain free controversy back in
Yeah.
2018. We were talking about it a little bit offline. And all of a sudden, it just felt like all the headlines, all my feeds on social were talking that are saying and claiming and stating that grain free foods were, I don't want to say the word, but like really negatively impacting dogs
Mhm.
in a very severe way. And it became really scary, really confusing. There was a lot of information out there. Some was correct, some was not, and some we still don't know. And so, I guess my question for you is, I kind of want to go back to that time because I think it'll be really relevant to when we talk about this study and the results that are really surprising. Um, can you tell me a little bit about how the concerns were raised regarding a potential association to heart disease and a grain-free diet? Like, how did that even start back several years ago?
So when it first happened, it would be so typically in vet practice, if we ever diagnose a dog with cardiomyopathy, there's all those more common breeds. Like it's a large breed dog, the two most common ones, like Dobies, Dobermans, and Boxers. And they would come in and I'd see a young dog and one of those big breeds, that would be kind of be in my mind, rule out DCM. But we know there's genetic correlation. Now there's actually even a genetic test. You can see if your dog is potentially at, you know, risk of DCM genetically.
Okay.
But then in 2018, what was it? There was a really active golden retriever group within the US. And some of these golden retrievers were being diagnosed with DCM.
Mm.
Um, a bunch of them then went to Stanford. They actually had some specific golden studied in Stanford. They were looking at these retrievers that were diagnosed with DCM,
Right.
and they didn't see any genetic markers. But what they did find for many of these dogs, if they supplemented them with an amino acid called taurine, which is key, like it's one of the big key amino acids for normal heart muscle and function, many of them they're having reverse clinical signs, so they were improving. So that was sort of 2018, but just seeing this number of especially Goldens developing DCM that we'd never seen before in the past. And in part, I mean, I don't know, maybe that's always been there to some degree. Sometimes, like veterinary medicine, you might diagnose heart disease, but you might not go as far as doing an ultrasound to say that it's actually DCM. You might just say, I think this dog has, some type of valvular heart disease, like maybe mitral valve insufficiency, and you put it on heart medication. And a lot of the same heart medication, regardless of the underlying heart condition, is the same. So then that dog might slightly improve. And unfortunately, right, for many of the dogs, especially if they have advanced heart disease, they don't have a long lifespan. But that's
Right.
maybe part of it, is that maybe it was there. But you have all these Goldens, they studied it. Then that sort of went around the veterinary community. There's kind of bigger alert. Maybe they wonder about a dietary correlation. Is there not enough taurine? Are they not absorbing it? So a whole bunch of other people, that was on their radar, and they started looking for it and seeing this in other dogs. So that all that information made its way to the FDA. And 2018, that's when they published this big report stating that there's this link, and they even named specific grain-free dog foods, primary the pulses. So as we talked about peas, right?
Yep.
Beans, legumes, lentils, chickpeas, etc., being primarily correlated, perhaps even potato, sweet potato.
Mm.
And I mean, originally they said about 500 dogs had been affected
Right.
out of 70 something million dogs in the US. It's like a fraction of a percent, but that's what they said. And I think the maximum number after all the reports, and that was they went retrospectively from 2013 on, was
Mhm.
about 1,000 dogs. So that's how it started.
Yeah. And well, but even before that, I mean, I think what's interesting is, and correct me if I'm wrong, but the way that even grain free became so popular is the industry, or pet parents, I guess, were becoming alarmed with the high amount of grain in pet food. Like, it kind of
Mm.
became corn is evil, rice is evil, wheat is evil. And so many brands, a lot of what people call boutique brands, came in and said, okay, well, the shift in what pet parents are excited about is less grains. Okay, so then let's develop these foods that, instead of corn and wheat, we're going to do potatoes and peas. And so this almost, uh, the consumer, the pet parent, almost kind of shifted this industry, and then it kind of opened up this other potential issue, and that became a whole controversy on its own. Not to go down too much in this, and that, was this DCM issue brought up from brands that didn't like this movement or this change, or maybe have been impacted financially? Who knows? I don't have an answer on that. But it just really opened up a lot of doors and a lot of conversations into pet food. And I really feel like that shifted a lot of pet parents that wanted to feed well, and were interested in the topic, but weren't as obsessed into it. I feel like it kind of pushed them over the edge, and like, okay, I'm really going to get focused into what I'm feeding my dog and making sure it's the best possible, because we really can see the impact here. I really feel like that shifted a lot of us. What do you think on that?
Well, I remember first being in practice, and originally everybody kind of fed the same sort of thing. It was all grain-based diets, and especially during the sort of late 90s and early, so I mean, a few years ago. But especially then, all of a sudden, as you just said, like there's a whole lot more focus on like questioning pet nutrition, looking at there's all these typical veterinary brands, which ones I even had in the vet clinic,
Mhm.
which were just some unnamed, very common companies, which we all know that you're going to find in any vet clinic,
Yep.
which were like grain based, which are like developed with science to have all the exact nutrients and treat whatever medical condition your dog or cat may have.
Yeah.
Um, but yeah, they all had, they might, many had corn, many had all the different grains as the base, right? Pretty high carb content, right? And there was a whole lot of focus on dogs, especially with chronic disease, and wondering, well, is there like a diet correlation?
Mm.
And, so that sort of drove for a lot of people really thinking there's got to be a better way. And that's, then went over to the pet food companies, right? But as you said, Rachel, was the more smaller companies, the ones that are a little more responsive to the public as opposed to the big corporations.
Yeah. So now, fast forward to today, well, to this year, we have a new study that came out. So then there was a period of years there where there was a lot of negativity towards grain-free diets. At least that was my experience.
100%. Yeah.
Yeah, and so which was, interesting. And now, recently, I think we can jump into the study because this is what's most exciting. This is the meat and bones of today because there was a new study. And I think what we can do is I'll break it down a little bit into what it was, and then I'll hand it over to you to talk a little bit more about what it actually means. And I think I'd like to, like I said, break it down really simply so that people watching this, they don't necessarily have to go read the full study, though it will be linked in the description below. And by the way, if you have not shared this video yet or dropped a like and subscribe, please do that because we're sharing all this information from an actual expert in the field, Dr. Jones, for absolutely free. So this study launched July of 2025, so just a few months ago. It was an 18-month randomized double-blind study. It was actually conducted by Hill's Pet Nutrition
Mhm.
and in conjunction with, I believe, Kansas State University. Is that correct?
I think you're right.
Yeah, and there were 60 healthy adult dogs. These were colony dogs. And honestly, at first, I was like, what's a colony dog? So I dug into that. And that's
Yeah.
essentially just means a dog that they raise in a research type setting. They're not like an actual pet dog. And we will talk about some of the limitations and some of the advantages of the study. No study that I've ever seen, at least, is 100% perfect. But the goal of this study was to assess whether or not different carb sources, whether they're grain carb sources or grain free carb sources like peas and potatoes, impacted or affected heart health and taurine synthesis or taurine status, which again can impact or lead to DCM or that heart disease we were just talking about. And then there were four different groups that were tested, or diets, I should say, four diet groups. There were two grain inclusive and two grain free. The grain free, I think there was a peas and potato diet group. Then there was a potato group, and then there was a what was it? Oh, a peas and pea fiber, and then a no peas potatoes group. So and these were all in-house formulated. These weren't like a specific brand. They formulated it themselves, and they added taurine. So that was kind of the general outline of what this study was. I like that it was pretty long, but can you tell me what some of the key findings were from this study?
Well, I mean, more than anything, the biggest one, Rachel, is after we got these four different subgroups of dogs that were followed upwards of like 18 months,
18
so
months,
a
yeah.
year and a half, and showed that there was, of all these four, what they said were complete balanced diets.
Yep.
So these were four complete balanced diets that had all the essential vitamins, minerals, all those essential amino acids were present. When they followed all those dogs feeding all those four separate diets, they all had normal cardiac function after like 18 months, regardless of what diet they ate. But they were eating, suggested amounts of food with all the appropriate nutrients over that period of time. And there was no difference whether we're eating grain inclusive or grain free, just looking at cardiac function, regardless. As you said, the two with grain, one was grain and I can't remember, one was grain and peas, grain and
Yeah.
non-peas, and then right, and then separating out the peas versus peas and potatoes with the grain-free diets. But regardless, right? And that was the first time there's been that long term of a study. There was a study done, I'll just quickly refer, there's one that was done in Canada in Guelph in 2023, and
Okay.
that that was sponsored by Champion, which is makes a canna. I mean, I really think they're a great company. But
Mhm.
regardless, but that was a shorter study, about 20 weeks. And that one showed they did a study using grain and grain-free dog food, and that one showed same thing. It showed that there were no detrimental effects from feeding this grain-free dog food, which included peas and lentils. That was a short 20-week study, never something done over 18 months. And
Right.
this is the first time there's been a long-term study looking at a number of dogs and specifically measuring cardiac function.
Yeah. And wasn't in actually not to backtrack too much, but didn't the FDA at one point retract their concern of a grain-free diet potentially leading to DCM? Wasn't that something that happened a few years ago?
I, I didn't actually see that,
Okay.
but I think what I did, and maybe they did, what I remember what I did see is that there's no further updates. I read that, when they stopped posting updates on DCM and dog food, and they also reported there's just been a marked decline in any reported cases.
Yeah,
So we're going to no longer provide any additional updates.
that's what it
And
was. Yeah.
but it just sort of faded from their radar,
Yeah,
right?
it
So
became less of a
and I and it really makes you wonder. So like, was that a real thing or not? And like, should we all have gone out? Because Rachel, did you go out and change your dog's food?
yeah, I mean, I
Right.
thought peas were killing my dog, and I wasn't feeding, so we're gonna get in I mean, yes,
Okay.
I did. Well, and then we'll get
You
into
did.
what we're feeding. I was gonna go into a whole another side part, but yeah,
Okay.
I
Sorry,
was
I was
like, "Oh
curious.
gosh," like, like I like to feed, green beans, to my dogs, just like canned, no salt added green beans for training treats. I was like, "Oh gosh," like, is this going to hurt my dogs? I mean, it impacted everything. And I know, especially in my community, there was panic, actual panic, understandably so. I mean, when something like this comes out, we need to take it seriously. But it was, but I agree with you. Looking back now, I'm like, I'm not saying whether it was or wasn't true or happened or didn't happen, but it's kind of like it was like this huge thing, and now it's kind
Look,
of
what? Yeah, and I was much the same as you. I mean, I just instantly I locked on to peas being what I thought was the primary culprit, and I made sure my dog was not getting any peas. And here we are now, like 7 years later, and maybe that wasn't a thing.
maybe, yeah. And so I feel like the most interesting takeaway from this study, and this is not conclusive, this is set in, I think ultimately we my takeaway from the study was that there's still more research that needs to be done always, but
Yeah.
what this study is suggesting strongly is that with regard to heart disease, DCM, it's not necessarily about grain free versus grain inclusive. It's more, is it a complete and balanced, appropriately balanced food with ultimately high quality ingredients so the dogs can synthesize and get the taurine that they need, etc. But whether or not there were peas or potatoes or wheat or corn didn't, according to the study, impact the dog's chances of getting DCM. I mean, is that a
Exactly.
takeaway?
Yeah,
I mean,
I,
so
I agree. Yeah.
yeah, and that either diet, grain free or grain inclusive, could potentially, assuming it's balanced, promote proper heart health, which is pretty
Correct. Yeah.
wild to think, and especially because that's not been what we've been hearing in the industry for a while now. So it's kind of exciting. And it kind of just takes me back to the days before 2018 where I mean, we've been doing this, but we've been preaching the importance of and I know this term gets some slack, but more of a species appropriate diet, like making sure
Yeah.
a dog's diet is as much as appropriate or as much as possible consisting of real whole meats from animal protein, which is
Yes.
where taurine comes from. So it's almost kind of like going back in time to what we talked about, and all this stuff confused us, and now we're back to there. It seems like. Would you agree with that?
Yeah. Yeah. I think you're exactly right. So what, for instance, so with the A couple points. One, obviously, with these golden retrievers, when they first were diagnosed with DCM, they would supplement them with taurine, and majority of them responded on supplemental taurine. So it's interesting. I was reading some stuff before we did the live stream interview. Thought it was good to be prepared, Rachel.
There you go.
And one of the articles I read is from Dr. Karen Becker,
Mhm.
who they sort of postulated, what if maybe part of it is, yes, here's a correct balanced diet. But if you don't feed enough of that food, like say you've got a dog who's overweight, so your idea is I'm just going to feed him less.
Yep.
Say you only feed half of that kibble that's suggested as far as to contain all the adequate nutrients, and then maybe you just add in some, I don't know, some supplemental rice or something to make him feel filled. It's possible then, right, that your dog isn't getting enough amino acids
Yep.
to either one, there's two amino acids. I think it's methionine and cysteine that can make taurine, right?
Mhm.
So if your dog's not eating enough animal protein, and it comes from animal protein,
Correct.
right? Like the only plant that makes any substantial taurine, I think, is seaweed.
Mhm.
But on whole, everything else, it's an animal protein, and it's got to be the darker red meat. Like, yep, there's taurine in chicken and there's taurine in turkey, but it's the dark meat that has it, right? So that's why, you know, the red. And as you talked about, that species appropriate food. So if you're feeding enough of that, then you're going to have enough taurine, right? Likewise, there's another amino acid called carnitine, which it can cause heart disease. It's far less common, but I think Cocker Spaniels can get carnitine deficient, and they can get DC or dilated type of heart disease like DCM. But once again, that's an amino acid. It comes from animal protein, in our particular, the red meat, the darker red meat. Um, and it can also be preformed by a couple of those amino acids. But all that is relating to the enough protein with enough amino acids.
Yes.
And you don't get that from carbohydrates. You don't like you can't, right?
Yeah, that was a big trend too of feeding a grain-free diet and then people adding grains thinking that would help taurine
Oh,
synthesis. And yeah, that's not taurine, as you said,
yeah,
doesn't come from grains or it comes from meat. So
yeah, it
that was
comes.
that was a really interesting there's a lot of confusion, I think is what the key is there.
Yeah, and I think you're right. It's come around like full circle back into like what is like species appropriate food? Like, what are food ingredients that your dog is going to best thrive on? And yeah,
Yeah, and I think that's a good kind of segue into kind of what we are looking for and what we are avoiding, I guess, in pet foods. I think the other thing that's oops, there we go. The other thing that I think is hold on, lost my screen there.
very original. Okay, yep, you
Okay,
disappeared, but now you're back.
yeah, I was like, where am I? Wait, do you see me? Because now I don't see me.
No, I see you. It
Okay.
says RF. I can hear you.
Oh, interesting. Let's see here. I'm using a new webcam, so that's okay. Let me see if I
Yeah,
can do this.
what is
But
it?
what I was going to say is um, one of the things that I am here. Let me just do this. Watch this. Should fix it. One of the things that I feel like should might be interesting and might impact it is also the extrusion or the high processing
Yeah.
of the food. So I think that there's an argument for making sure we add some fresh meat to the diet in terms of taurine synthesis. What do you think of that while I try to fix my video?
Well, for I mean, for lots of different reasons, processed food is not good, right? And anytime you expose, like, say, an animal protein to high heat, like you produce some pretty nasty things called acrylamides, which have clearly been correlated to some pretty bad things, even like cancer. But
Mm,
anytime you process a food, you grind it up and you mix it in with a whole bunch of other things like a carb and a, a bunch of different carbs, some type of fat, and then squish it, form it into a kibble, right? And you really alter like some of the nutrient value of that food, regardless. So there's no way, in my opinion, you can take, right, real whole food ingredients are always going to be better, in my opinion, than this like a processed like kibble that is so-called balanced. So you're the point. I still feed some kibble, and we were talking about that earlier,
Yep.
but it's about half of my dog's diet. The other half is, as we were saying, it's this gently cooked, prepackaged food, um, which he really loves, by the way. Um, so it's not as if you can't be kibble, but know that you're going to definitely increase some of the nutrient bioavailability if you add in some of the fresher stuff. And what you just talked about, even just having like some good quality animal protein is ideal.
Yeah. Yes, absolutely. And while I'm still working on my video, because I think this is still really interesting, whether or not you can see my face, um, why don't you talk a little bit about what you are looking for when you're picking a pet food and what you're avoiding right now?
Oh, those are like good questions. And okay, those are really good
Yeah.
questions. And in part, I've been sort of going through my dog's own diet. I mean, she's older; she's a senior dog now, and she does have some underlying. She had elevated liver enzymes about a year ago. She was in for dental. Blood work showed one enzyme quite elevated. So in part for her, I'm looking for a diet, knowing she has elevated liver enzymes, but she is a senior. I want a high quality bioavailable protein, maybe a little bit lower than I would when she was seven or eight. So slightly lower protein. I want to ensure that yes, there is some carbohydrates in there, but their carbohydrates potentially provide some positive nutrients, right?
Yep.
As opposed to just something that's just there that's not really offering much nutritional value. So one of the ones I really like is sweet potato, and she's on a healthy amount with some good positive fats in there, right? So I've even just upped her omega-3 fatty acid, the amount of omega-3 fatty acids she's getting, and some of the additional, when I'm looking at some of the oils that are added in, I preferably there's a few less seed oils. I really like, personally like olive oil, because you
Yep.
do also need all that fat for a bunch of different reasons as well.
Yep.
Um, so when I'm looking at it though, and I'm generally, I mean, even is it okay just to share what I'm feeding her as far as the brand food?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, sure. So I was saying we're talking about earlier, and I'm saying I'm feeding her Acana, which is Champion Pet Food, and she's on their senior formula. So that's about half of her diet, and the other one is a company called Dog Standards here in Canada, which is very much the equivalent of Fresh Pet in the United States, where that's about another half of her diet. She's on a few different supplements because of her. She's on a milk thistle SAMI supplement. We have a liver supportive supplement, but she's obviously on mine because I make one. But those are the two most important ingredients to help support her liver, along with as along with the. She's on 1,000 milligrams of krill a day too, as well. Um, but when you're asking me, well, what else am I looking for? And then the
Yeah.
other thing I'm adding in, and I've made a point as far as treats go, I'm giving her treats like single ingredient animal protein,
Mhm.
as opposed to there's no type of carbohydrate treats. And there's one in particular, now that we're doing this talk on heart disease, that she really likes and I really like. It's actually chicken hearts.
Ooh,
Yeah,
which is
they're
a rich source, has a rich source of, taurine.
exactly. It's a great source. And she likes it. Not only she likes it, the cat likes them too. Um,
I love it. Oh,
yeah.
I'm so sorry that you can't see me, but I am here and we're just gonna
Yeah.
roll with it. I don't know what happened to, technology. At least we made it over halfway without major tech issues.
Yes.
Um,
Mm,
yeah, I mean, I agree with everything you're saying. I think, for me, it's been, it's been a journey to figure out, but I think making sure for me, it's like I want good nutrients, good ingredients. I try to feed as much of a fresh food diet as possible. But sometimes, there's more of like an air dried option added in. And, I know that there's a lot of veterinarians that will avoid pulses or legumes or like peas in the first, five ingredients. For me, it's more so um, are looking to see if the peas or pulses are listed back to back, meaning you see, pea fiber, pea protein when there's a lot. That's ingredient splitting, where the manufacturer will sometimes do that to make peas, for example, look like it's lower down on the ingredient panel. But the other thing I also really look at, and I don't see a lot of people talking about this, is asking the manufacturer, especially in a kibble, what the percent of protein comes from meat, animal meat, because again, that's what's important. I like to
That's a
see,
good idea.
yeah, and I like to see at least 80, 85%. Some brands, I think Akana Origin, I believe they put that on the bag, but some brands will put it right on the bag. My prediction is in the next 3 to 5 years, that's going to be like the next, I don't know, superfood term that brands are using for the ones that are doing it right, because it's such an important thing that I don't think enough brands are talking about. So if it's not on the bag or the website, I ask them because I want a higher percent of protein coming from meat. I don't want the protein coming as much from corn, gluten, and uh, peas and soybean and things like that.
Agreed, and that there's just some great points to make because it's easy, just as you said, look at the bag and see the protein percent.
Yeah.
But as you said, find like what percent comes from animal protein.
Yes.
Um, Knowing, yeah, that's so much better for your dog.
Absolutely. And I love I'm just a talking black box. But are there any other notes or things that you want to address when it comes to DCM, heart disease, or this study?
Is Well, one of the things I read like prior to um, doing our live stream was early on when the FDA was publishing all this, and they were talking about DCM and its link with dog food. Is when Guelph first did their study, and they only did a 20-week study. The FDA said, no, you need a 4-year study to make it realistic. Which I don't know if that's true or not. They did an 18-month study, but it would be great to see a longer term even study if that could be funded
Yes.
over a 4 or 5 year period of time to see that these dogs are eating all these different classes of foods, grain and grain free. Just, I would feel more confident about that. To know there's that much more validity in the study. But after 18 months, I'm feeling pretty good. My dog, she's eating some peas. Like she has some legumes in her dry
Hmm.
kibble. But as you said, it's a little bit further down on the ingredient list. And I'm going to go back and do what Rachel suggests. See if they split up. You talk about ingredient splitting, where they say like pea protein, and like you got all the different pea parts of that
Yeah.
plant split up, and then you get a better sense of how much is in there. So that was a good point to make. So I'm going to go refer back to that just to clarify all that. Um,
Awesome. Very cool. Yeah, I think it's helpful, and it's something easy that every one of us can do. Just look on the back of the bag and see. And that same goes with soy and rice. Sometimes you'll see like rice bran, rice fiber. It's just like I'm not against rice or peas or any of that. But when it's so much of the food, that's where I get leery, I'll say. Um, so let's see here.
100%.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think this is really good. I think for anybody watching, make sure again that you're sharing and subscribing. Make sure that if you want to learn more about pet food and holistic pet health remedies, you check out Dr. Jones' channel in the description, and you go to his website veterinarysecrets.com, because there I know you have a lot of awesome products. You have a lot of free amazing information. You also have courses and webinars. I mean, you full time are helping pet parents make better decisions for their pets, and accessible, which I think is amazing. So I hope everybody goes and does that.
Also, thank you, Rachel. That As you are yourself too. Um, as far as one thing I wanted to refer back to peas. So,
Oh,
for
yes.
instance, I was just going to mention with people in general,
Hmm.
there's a diet called the FODMAP diet,
Oh,
which
yeah.
many people are on if they have IBS, for instance, in it. And what they look at, obviously, it's not the same thing because we have a very different digestive tracts than our dogs, and we didn't obviously originate from wolves. But one of the things that has to be avoided in that FODMAP diet is peas. In that,
Mm.
um, for many people, they really, really react to them. So, I mean, it could be that there just are some dogs, right? Just like there are some people that just can't break that nutrient down. Um, but I think typically you're going to see that in a dog that's going to have GI distress. They're going to have reflux. They're going to have maybe bloating. They're going to have maybe intermittent bouts of vomiting or intermittent bouts of diarrhea, right? They're going to have gastrointestinal upset if that's the case. Um, but I think if your dog is able to digest that food properly in terms of he's happy to eat it and he has normal, healthy form stool, then I think in that case you're okay. But just to keep that in mind as far as when you're looking at food ingredients.
Okay. That's really interesting. That's not something I had thought of. So
Mhm.
I'm glad you shared that. Any other tidbits on that? Because that's any other that I missed. That's really good.
Well, I know the other thing when this first came out, I remember reading, as I didn't seem to read a whole lot of stuff. I mean, they're concerned what you mentioned with phytates. They're concerned with other ingredients in peas called lectins, right? Which then might affect damage the intestine and just make it more difficult for the intestines to absorb certain key nutrients. So the thought was then maybe your dog eats this protein product. Maybe he's not eating enough taurine, but maybe he's eating enough protein that has cysteine and methionine in it. But if he can't absorb those, break that protein down and absorb it, then that could lead to taurine deficiency.
Mm.
Um, so that was maybe if you I think my big what I'm trying to get to the point there again is, if there is some sort of ongoing intermittent even gastrointestinal upset where it seems like your dog's not properly digesting this stuff, then just go ahead and look at those ingredients. And maybe that would be a case for then not including peas as, part of that kibble.
Yeah.
But I think for most dogs it's fine. And my dog's doing great on it. And I'm not about to change your diet now.
Yeah. I mean, if your dog's doing great, and we just have to do the best that we can do until we know better. I think it's just I don't think that there's anyone, and maybe I'm wrong, but I don't think there's anybody who could say we know with 100% confidence this is exactly the best perfect way to feed a dog in the most optimal way. Uh, I think that there's still so much to learn. I think we have a lot of good leading indicators, and I think we can be close in a lot of ways, but I just feel like there's so much more to learn.
Oh, Rachel, and the other thing I was going to just do a little, not that I have nothing to do with anyone who sells chicken hearts
Yeah, no, I love
as a treat.
it.
But the other thing with when you are feeding, say, a heart as a part of a protein source, it can just be a small part of the protein source. It's really rich in that one antioxidant called coenzyme Q10, which is which is really high demand within the gums and especially within the heart muscle. So they like your dog's heart muscles, it needs this coenzyme Q10 so his little um, mitochondria can work normally and he produces enough energy in the cells and then the heart muscle cells can grow normally and pump properly.
Mm,
So by feeding that as an additional treat, it's just a real natural way to add in additional CoQ10 without giving it as a supplement. And I mean, I think that's probably one of the big whole takeaways from many people that are just feeding, they're making all their dog's own food is they've got these different whole real ingredients and they're able to provide those additional nutrients because it's in some of the protein sources such as CoQ10 and heart.
interesting. Um, is there a brand that you really like? I mean, you're welcome to share that as well. It's always or is it a Canadian?
No, it was actually, you know what? I don't actually have it right here. It was actually a US company and it was freeze dried chicken hearts, which my animals are raving about. Um, maybe I'll get it after, and maybe you can we can share it in the description box. Oh, you're back.
Oh, there we go. Okay. Woohoo!
Hey,
The
hey,
the I got
that's
the
awesome.
text. Yes, here we go. Gosh, crazy. Sorry, so say that again because I think I missed what the brand was.
Oh, so I don't have because I don't. It's actually
Oh,
in my
okay, that's
kitchen, but
fine.
I'll run it after, and then send it to you, maybe just share that on the description box
Yeah, I'll put it
as
down in
far
the
as
description for anybody.
nice.
And I just want to check if there were any questions in the chat box because I know there's actually a lot of comments here, and we were trying to figure out how we could compile these and answer them another time too. But I feel like,
Sure.
have you heard of NAD for heart
Yeah.
health? Somebody was
Well, I've
asking.
heard so NAD is one of the big things. I think it's called nicotine adenine.
Nicotinamide, right? Is that what?
Nicotinamide adenosine mononucleotide. Okay, the actual NAD or NAD plus, it's one of the big key nutrients that's being studied for longevity in dogs
Okay.
or in people and dogs and animals in general. And if you look at some of these different pathways, what they're trying to do is give certain supplements that increase the amount of this key nutrient, increase NAD, and that's correlated with having stronger functioning cells.
Okay.
So is one of the things. And if your DNA isn't damaged and the rest of the cell is working properly, because especially as we age, that's what happens, right? Is the you get these changes, maybe just from ongoing cell death, and you get oxidation, and that damages the core genetic material of the cell. DNA gets damaged, and then that leads to disease. So I think that's when this person is talking about it. So one of the things, just as an aside, if you wanted to, a more holistic way to increase NAD levels in your dog, is some of the supplemental seaweed can be beneficial. So there's a couple nutrients, like one called fucodam. I can't remember exactly how to spell it, that are found within some of the darker brown seaweed.
Okay.
The exact amount, I don't know, but it's been interesting looking at all the different things people talk about for aging, and there's a bunch of different anti-aging supplements. But one of the things they're trying to target is the heart, because that's what ages, right? It's just like any muscle, right? Eventually, it loses its ability to pump as effectively. It gets older, and that's one of the organs that will fail, right?
Yeah, I
So
mean,
that's why,
we have
yeah,
so many beats. Somebody once told that to me,
exactly,
which actually stressed me when they said that. I was like, "Wait, I have
right,
so many beats." So, like, when
yeah,
my heart's racing, I'm like, "Oh gosh." But, yeah, I mean, it has so many beats, so whatever we can do
yeah.
to prolong it and keep our heart strong, and same thing for our dogs, and, actually
But that could help.
somebody
Yeah,
said that, NAD really helped bring energy, I to
it
their
does. So it gets the
sleep.
little mitochondria to like that powerhouse. Think the mitochondria, they're kind of like, think of them as the engine of the cell. So if you get those guys functioning more effectively, you're going to have more
Wow.
cellular energy.
Yeah, and this Ginny says that, she has cardiomyopathy herself, so both her and her dog take
Yeah,
NAD. So, and then I
interesting.
give my dog omega-3, 6, 9,
Yeah,
wish
definitely the omega-3 fatty acids.
yeah, she wishes that you supplied to Australia anytime doing that. Any chance of
Yeah,
doing that?
first, Australia really doesn't want. It's really challenging to export anything into Australia if it's an animal related product.
Okay.
Unfortunately,
I know, it's tough. I mean, you have some great products,
yeah,
people really want it.
yeah.
I'm just seeing if there's anything. Oh, good. So she's okay. I think Eliza's in there doing some stuff. Uh, well, this one isn't quite, but this is something I see a lot in like treats and dog food and stuff. But they're asking about copper storage in the liver and liver treats impacting
Yeah.
that. Have you looked into that at all?
As far, especially with my own dog getting liver disease, right?
Oh,
So if
right, yeah.
so if you are going to feed, like, say, a supplemental organ meat like liver, if you're going to feed it daily, it's got to be a really small amount to be extra safe. Maybe 2 to 3 times a week. Um, but that and it's gonna you want to make sure it's maybe less than 5% or less of the diet.
Mm,
But liver, right? It's that big organ that filters the blood. It's getting rid of some of these heavy metals, and it's concentrating in the liver. Um,
yeah.
so there is a condition, called copper storage disease, or we see some dogs get underlying primary liver disease from too much copper, which then damages the liver cells.
Yeah.
Um, so
One of the things I always look for in a dog food, it doesn't always mean it has too much copper, but I do a lot of nutrient analysis on commercial dog foods, and high copper is a pretty common thing I see. And one thing
Oh,
that,
really?
yeah, and one thing we can, and I'll be sharing all the information here shortly, but one thing we can look for is if you see liver in the first, 3 to 5 ingredients, like beef liver, for example, and then if you go down to the synthetics, if they also add a copper
Oh,
synthetic, though that can be a leading indicator, meaning that it may have a little bit too much copper, not
right.
always. So that's something I kind of like, if you're worried about copper storage syndrome, that's something I would look for. And then that plus feeding liver treats, it could be an issue.
Yes. Yeah, that's a good point. The other thing with liver, which I think was more affecting my own dog, is she was on a I was giving her far too many of actually a really good qual a company a really good quality liver treat because a whole lot of the soft dog treats are liver treats.
Mhm.
Just they're super tasty. If I fed her 1 a day, it was fine, but if I'm feeding her 20, she's only 20, she's just a small little dog. So I was overfeeding her, and I think that might have been part of the role, because you can also cause vitamin A toxicity. But you've gotta feed way too much of it, right? And that's
Yeah.
because the livers also has quite high levels of vitamin A, which you need it. It's important for a whole bunch of different body systems for your dog. But as you said, so that's a good point when you said about copper, like checking if they've got additional liver and if they add supplemental copper, like added in synthetic.
Yeah. And it's
That's
synthetics,
interesting.
or I'm not against synthetics at all. Some of my dog's foods have a little bit. I take vitamin D and magnesium personally.
Right.
But the risk with foods that are made with vitamin and mineral synthetics or synthetic packs is that, takes one error to put a little too much, a little too little. So that's also why I like to rotate foods. Um, but I want to share Hannah's comment. Dr. Jones, supplements are wonderful. The first time I received them, my dog attacked the box and couldn't get enough. You can't go wrong. I just wanted to share that. That's
Oh,
sweet.
thanks.
And,
That's awesome.
and all of his supplements are at veterinarysecrets.com and also in the description for those. But cool. I think this was good. I think we covered a lot. I mean, I think the net of this, for me at least, is that we still don't know definitively, but my worry around grain free foods is far less. And this is actually back to what I said before. My focus is just feeding our dogs what they're meant to eat, and I don't mean like feeding them like a wolf, or I'm not trying to get too generic or focused on all these terms, but really feeding them what they were designed to digest. Meats, and as minimally processed as we can. And I think if we do that and we prioritize protein from meat, it can help decrease risks of multiple nutritional deficiencies or potential diseases because of those. And so that's really what I focus on with my dogs. Even if I'm feeding a dog kibble, adding some, gently cooked ground beef or something on top, or sardines, no salt added, can be really
Yeah.
helpful.
Yeah. And the one thing I want to add is, in part, even just when I became more open, I remember being in veterinary practice, and it was pretty standard. The food companies would give us continuing education, and you got to sell this dried food, right? This is what they'd say. But I would see clients come in. So you're seeing all like pet parents, just like most people watching this. And often the ones that were either making their dogs food at home, even the ones feeding raw, often those are the dogs that were healthiest. They often had the things I would notice, they often had the best teeth. Right?
Yeah.
Well, and these were the dogs that were in the least commonly. Like they were just healthier. So for me, that was a big eye opener, and like, okay, I'm taught you got to feed this stuff. It's 100% balanced. Whereas you can make your dog's food at home be pretty close, which is how we feed ourselves, right? And
We do pretty okay. I mean, you
we
you have a daughter. Were you, when she was little and you were feeding her, I mean, were you balancing? I'm not saying we shouldn't have balanced meals, but were you
no,
balancing each?
no,
Okay. So I did a video of this a while ago, which is funny because I'm obsessed with what my dogs eat, and researching it and making sure it's all the right nutrients. But sometimes I have to take a step back. I'm like, Rachel, I don't do that for myself. I don't have human kids, but I mean, I can't see myself if I did to like
Mhm.
balance every meal, or even every week. I barely think of that for myself. So sometimes I take a step back. I'm like, okay, if I focus on real whole foods, variety, focusing on ingredients that my dogs are designed to digest, working with a veterinarian, I think they're going to be okay. But again, I'm not condoning or promoting not feeding balanced foods. I do think that's important. It's just I think sometimes we stress a lot about it, and it might be a little problematic. It's my personal opinion.
Yeah, I think that's a really good points and good
Yeah.
suggestion. Yeah.
It's hard. I have to word it so carefully because people are like, "Oh, she said you could." No, I'm not saying just feed your dog some rice and ground turkey, but um, I don't know. That probably might be a better diet than some of the ones out there. So I don't know. Okay. Any other final thoughts on this before we wrap it up?
Is so is it 100% definitive that there is no correlation with diet and DCM? Well, like the one thing we do know is if there isn't enough taurine or the amino acids to make taurine, like your dog can get DCM for sure, right? But that being said, when you look at all the current commercial diets that are there, whether they include legumes or they don't, um, there doesn't seem to be a correlation now for sure, right? So, and if anyone's really concerned, like just find a way to add in some of that additional dark red or protein that is going to have additional taurine.
Yeah, absolutely. I couldn't agree more. And I think this is powerful. I think this is exciting, and I'm excited for people to, like I said, share this video because I think this information needs to get out there. And I don't think Dr. Jones and I are trying to change the way you feed your dog or convince you to do one thing or another. I think we're just trying to help you make educated decisions. Take this video, share it with your vet. Um, Look at the study, read it yourself. It'll be in the description. But I think making decisions just based on fear can be overwhelming. So I think this will just help us make logical decisions for our pets and not, it used to be like I said before, corn is evil. And now it's like peas are evil. It's like, what's going to be next? It's like, I don't personally think there's many ingredients that are just inherently like whole food, real food, fresh food ingredients that are inherently evil. I think focusing on balance is the most important.
Although I kind of agree with you, corn
Yeah,
really
I know.
has it.
Yes,
Corn has its issues.
yes, yes. The corn that they use in pet food, absolutely. But you know what? I love me some sweet corn in the
Good
summer.
point. Yeah,
And I always
yeah,
the cob goes straight in the dumpster because that's a choking hazard. But do I give
yeah.
my dogs a little pieces of
Oh,
fresh
for sure,
corn?
right?
Of course. But yeah, the
Yeah,
the corn that's used in pet food is primarily what they feed livestock and make
yep,
products from that, it's
yeah.
not real food. So I agree with
No,
you.
isn't
Yes. Corn.
yeah, but anyway, yes.
Yes. It's
That's
corn.
great. Okay, and if you would like wait 1 second before you share, I'm just gonna grab that bag just to show
Yeah,
you what
grab it. Just show
the
yeah,
freeze dried
absolutely.
chicken hearts. Okay, be right back.
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. And drop some more questions we have in here. Patty says corn is toxic. Bananas have a lot of sugar, probably not good for dogs. I feed my dogs bananas. I just prioritized, and I learned this from Dr. Karen Becker, green bananas because they're a little bit naturally lower in sugar, more
Okay,
prebiotics, and I like the taste better. So I like
okay.
green bananas. All right, what do we have here?
So
Bacon.
here they are, these freeze
Okay,
dried chicken hearts. It's
love it.
from a little company. Where does it say? Ellen. I don't know if you can read that. It says, I think it says Wisconsin.
Oh, cool.
Some little tiny company that, and my animals, they love these little chicken hearts.
Oh, I love
Mm.
it. I haven't
And
fed
I'll just
Herc
show
in a
you.
while. I'm gonna get some
Yeah,
heart treats after this.
there it is. Here's the great source of taurine and CoQ10 and all the amino acids. That's it.
And your cat eats that as well.
But the cat loves it. Like he's like the cat and the dog, which is great because cats need preformed taurine in their diet. They can't make it from those other amino acids. So the more taurine for your cat in general, the better.
Yeah, I love that. Oh, I love that, love that. That's very cool. So again, veterinarysecrets.com for all of Dr. Jones' supplements, products, webinars. If you want to see my dog food list, my favorite pet products, just rachelfusaro.com. Very easy. Everything will be linked in the description. And Dr. Jones, I want to thank you again for coming on today. I hope we can do this again soon. I think this was really helpful for pet parents. And I think a lot of veterinarians are going to watch this as well. So I appreciate all of your insight.
Thank you, Rachel. I'm glad to be here and glad to be on. And yes, I hope we do it again soon too.
Yeah. Very cool. All right. I'm going to end that here. Thank you, everyone. Don't forget to share and subscribe. Those are two very important things to help spread the message and how we feed our dogs better.